From Poland, whose Prime Minister has declared a state of emergency, to Bangladesh, where 1.2 million households are trapped by flash floods, to Myanmar, where mudslides have claimed the lives of hundreds. This summer has brought with it extreme and deadly weather, exacerbated by an ever-warming planet.
These are not random events delivered from the heavens. These are failures of politics, failures of regulation, and frankly, failures of international cooperation.
Today, the new Foreign Secretary used his very first speech to say climate change was his department's #1 priority.
The threat may not feel as urgent as a terrorist or an imperialist autocrat, but it is more fundamental. It is systemic, it's pervasive, and accelerating towards us at pace.
He said he discussed the responsibility of maintaining a livable planet with Sir David Attenborough last week and fronted an apocalyptic video posted on social media this morning to signal his agonising over it. But as he attacked the previous government's record on the environment, he said replacing its dropped funding target to tackle global climate change was only an ambition, prompting fears the $12 billion once promised by 2026 could be a victim of the autumn budget. All while the Global South says developed countries need to contribute much, much more to the fight.
My message today is that we will take on the blockers, the delayers, the obstructionists.
A few miles away, the Energy Security Secretary said he would speed up clean energy infrastructure, repeating the government's pledge to become a so-called clean energy superpower by 2030. Today's is a two-pronged attack from the government intended to boost its climate credentials both at home and abroad.
Even before the election, Labour were talking a lot about their energy commitments, things like Clean Power 2030, their Warm Homes Plan. They were talking about it in the build-up to the election. And since, we've seen some action. So we've seen action on lifting the onshore wind ban. We've seen action on GB Energy. Obviously, they're talking a lot about that and partnering with the Crown Estate. But we haven't seen very much at all on the Warm Homes Plan, which was their grand plan for insulation. And that's really essential because that's the thing that's going to reduce our gas demand right down and keep people's bills low.
With November's COP29 climate summit looming, the UK has today pledged a new global alliance to speed up decarbonisation. But the Global South wants developed nations, many of them historic polluters, to show them the money. With American government scientists warning 2024 will be the hottest year on record, the urgency is plain, but the politics, anything but.
Amelia Jen there. Well, I'm now joined by Nick Bridge, the UK's last climate envoy before the role was axed by Rishi Sunak, and from Westminster by the new Green MP, Ellie Chowns. Thanks, both of you, for joining us. Nick Bridge, can I come to you first? The Foreign Secretary today said climate is a bigger threat than terrorism and Putin, you know, which may take some people by surprise when they look at what's going on in Ukraine right now. Is he right?
Yes, I think he's absolutely right. It's systemic. It affects everybody in the world. It's here now, but it's going to get profoundly worse very quickly. So I think it was a very wise strategic move to set that out in what was his first speech, keynote speech as Foreign Secretary.
And Ellie Chowns, presumably you welcome a speech that gives a sense of just how seriously this government is going to take the environment.
Absolutely. I really welcome what David Lammy said today. You know, he's recognised the importance of the climate crisis and the nature crisis. And this is signalling that he and the government are taking a long-term approach to thinking about these issues, not just the immediately presenting problems, but recognising that the climate and nature crises are big strategic issues that have to be grasped, grappled with and dealt with.
And I mean, Nick Bridge, you were also, in a former life, a senior economist at the Foreign Office. Where is the money for all of this? Because we don't get to net zero here without spending and investing money. And making sure more vulnerable communities elsewhere in the world aren't left behind, as David Lammy said today. That's an enormous financial commitment for countries across the globe, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Well, we heard David Lammy recommit the UK's spend, the 11.6 billion. But the key thing, I think, is to see this not as a climate finance issue, rather a sort of whole of economy issue, because what we're trying to do now is build a clean economy that's incredibly more healthy for people. It's good for communities, it's good for jobs So there's no reason not to do it. And it's a much wider question of what kind of economy do we want, what kind of society do we want, what kind of environment, what kind of health do we want. And so it's more a question of whether all of our economic investment is going into the right kinds of places, rather than talking about the relatively small amounts of money that are being discussed under some of the climate finance funds internationally. So every country has to see this as an opportunity for its future prosperity and jobs and environment.
Although Ellie Chance, the Foreign Secretary said today its funding target to tackle global climate change was only an ambition. Does that make you nervous, that it's an ambition?
Yes, I noticed that what appeared to be a little bit of a sliding back, and I really hope that David Lammy clarifies that commitment is still there, because, of course, we actually need more funding for the UK to step up and provide the level of climate finance that is needed to support the transition to clean, green energy worldwide, and indeed to help countries adapt to the effects of climate change that are already coming down the road we can see directly ahead of us. But I think Nick's really right to draw attention to the fact that this framing of, oh dear, this is going to cost us money, is completely the wrong way to look at this. We've had reports going back 20 years.
But it will cost us money. That is the truth of it, isn't it?
In the short term, investment is needed. Investment is needed for anything worth doing. But I remember Nick Stern's report 15, 20 years ago that said the costs of not tackling climate change now will be far greater than the cost of tackling it. That still applies today, and we've lost 20 years. So it's urgent now to make that upfront investment, because long term that will benefit us all. And one of your people on the package before was talking about the need to invest in insulation of homes. This is absolutely critical. And while it's great to have a government that's talking about investing in renewable energy, we're not hearing nearly enough about demand-side investment, energy efficiency, reducing the need for energy. That's crucial in ensuring that everybody can live in a warm home and that we can reach our climate goals and stay within the 1.5-degree limit.
But Nick Bridge, I take your point about, we must have a sort of sweeping vision because of how important this is. But the money has to come from somewhere, and we have heard almost daily from the Labour government, about financial restraint, that there isn't money to do the things that they would like to do. Are you concerned about that?
No, what I'm most encouraged about today is the fact that unlike the previous government, this one has taken the chance to reset. We've got more than 120 countries around the world in the global south, island states, and we're saying, we're listening and we're hearing that this is your priority. It's also our priority. And so the strategic reset, where we're actually talking about the same priority and working out how to cooperate with each other, is something that was missing at the back end of that government. And so that's the key point, that I think, there is a vast global economy, vast global finance system. All of that can be harnessed to much greater common good if we cooperate. It's not about...
exactly on the last government. You were the most senior climate diplomat until that post was axed by the last government. What did that feel like in terms of, exactly that commitment that you say you're hoping to see and you're pleased to hear from the Labour government today?
Well, it was incredibly frustrating. We had done a phenomenal job as a country to host COP26 in Glasgow. It was an absolutely critical success after the Paris Agreement. And it was very difficult then to see policies not just be not focused upon, but actually to take steps back and to sort of rein in the ambition towards net zero, make it a political football. It was very unfortunate and quite hard, I think, for many officials who'd push those balls up the hill. So I think, yes, the fact that we've made the switch now on wind, we've moved from sort of maxing out oil and gas to looking at cutting those licenses and investing in cleaner, cheaper, more secure resources at home. I think all these things show that we're sort of making the shift towards re-accelerating. And the UK has been such a great leader on this for so many years, and hopefully this is a sign that we're back in that position.
Ellie Chance, really quickly, if you would. That rebuilding of reputation that Nick Bridge is talking about, can we do it?
I really hope we can. I think we need the government to sign up to the Non-Fossil Fuel Proliferation Treaty. We need the government to put their money where their mouth is in terms of investment in energy efficiency. And fundamentally, if we want to raise finance to tackle the climate crisis, then implement the polluter pays principle. Tax the oil and gas giants.
going to have to end it there. To both of you, thanks very much for talking to us today.